Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Toast to the Art Show with Nancy and Lisa, publishers of Big Blend magazines and full-time travelers on the Love Your Parks tour. Today, we welcome back Victoria Chick. She is a contemporary figurative artist, an early 19th and 20th century print collector. She's based in Silver City, which is in southwest New Mexico, home to the Gila Cliff Dwellings National Monument. It's a beautiful area. And she's also very involved and sparked the development, well, I should say the continuing development of the Southwest Regional Museum of Art and Art Center, which will eventually be in this beautiful building in historic downtown Silver City. So anyway, you can go to victoriachick.com. She's on our show every third Saturday. So welcome back. How are you doing, Victoria?
Oh, thank you, Lisa. It's nice to be back talking with you again.
Hey,
and
you
Nancy.
Too.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, today we were going to talk a little bit about, and it kind of spurred from our previous conversation. We were talking about, art education and the many roles that lives play. I mean, art plays into people's lives, whether you're in school and you start to learn how to paint, or you go to a museum like the Southwest Regional Museum of Art and Art Center. And by the way, everyone, the website for that is swrmart.org. You can learn more about that. And I know the education is a component of the museum. I think that's also where we've had this continuing theme of education and also art therapy. But to me, I look at art education as obviously important for artists who want to go into art and who are in art, and even professional artists like yourself to continue learning. But sometimes I think it's important that for the rest of us who aren't artists, that we actually do have some education and take some classes. I mean, there's those classes where people do paint and sip on wine. And do you think that has the benefit for us? To me, that sounds like fun. So that's a benefit.
Yeah, it does.
But doesn't it kind of change our ways of looking at art if we're talking about visual art when you do a little bit?
Well, there's so many different kinds of artists, so many different kinds. And you mentioned art therapy, and there's so many different avenues within art therapy. And I'm speaking about art therapy as someone who's not currently updated, because I was a registered art therapist back in the 1980s. And so some of the modalities I know have changed on that, although I think the basics have remained the same. But you mentioned the museum, and the museum has that little tag on it that is Museum and Art Center. And so that the whole complex, the museum and the art center, are involved in education and art education. The museum, if people are looking, they're gaining knowledge in appreciation, art appreciation. They're learning about particular artists. They're learning about particular styles. They're learning how a certain artwork might fit into the history of the era in which it was painted, or they can maybe even compare what happened in the past to what is happening now. So there's so many ways just visually to look at art and see the art making and learning of how art is constructed, or what is involved in making art happens in the art center. And sometimes these two, museum and art center, can sometimes overlap. So we're focused on education because all museums have that education component as a major part of their mission statement. And it is important. I mean, there's very few ways otherwise that an individual could increase their knowledge just of of everything around them than through art. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's kind of a a definition that's all over the page, but it kind of has to be. The more I'm around art, the more I realize that there's no simple definition for it.
It's true because it's integrity and real. Like when an artist creates something that's pure without it being, I want art to look exactly like this on my walls to, match my furniture.
Right.
I mean, it's still art, but it's not, that's commercial art maybe. But, and that still is pleasing, right? If it makes you feel comfortable in your home, it has,
Right.
there's some therapy right there. But, I think there's something about, like there's the studio tours, for example, in Silver City that you have. And when you go in the studio tours and you can meet the artists in their studios and see them paint or see them do a print or a lithograph or create ceramics, make jewelry, you start to understand what goes into it. There's when Nancy did the tour in South Africa with her art, I remember people wanting to go and buy the smaller paintings to see if they would be cheaper, like to save money. And I'm going, it's actually worse. Like
it's harder.
Smaller it is,
it's harder.
It's the other way around. And so there was this education, but if people see the process, they start to understand more. And then the value and that whole, like, can we buy one smaller, just kind of goes away because of the education you get from those kind of immersive experiences.
Right. Well, when you talk about smaller work, I can relate to that because I tend to paint fairly large, and of course we have lots of tourist business here in Silver City. And when you're a tourist, one of the reasons you're looking for something a little bit smaller is because you have to travel with it.
Sure.
So that's a consideration for a lot of people, and I know that's true because I have been guilty of trying to find something small myself when I'm traveling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. The thing with art is because it's done singularly by a person normally, everybody's different, and we all see something different. We can look at the same landscape or building, and the paintings will still all come out different from artist to artist, because I don't know if it's in our brain, we compute differently than each other, or you see color maybe a little bit different. Some people will paint a lot brighter than others, and some people want to paint really, really simplistic, and others want to get right down to almost a photographic representation. So, I mean, everybody thinks of it differently. So when you go to an art museum and you're looking at different paintings, I think it just kind of, makes you open your mind to, wow, that person really thinks differently.
Well, it's true. Artists approach art differently than somebody that, say, our therapist might be working with. Their goal in being there is for them to express themselves, and sometimes that's true with fine artists too. But say in art therapy, the materials you're using them in a different way. For instance, a lot of people have never done art before, but they might find themselves in art therapy. Sometimes people go to our therapist to find out more about themselves, and they might even be in a group doing this. Well, that's their choice. But sometimes people find themselves in an art therapy session, and it's not exactly against their will, but they didn't choose to do it. The doctor has recommended it or ordered it. So,
oh, really? I didn't even think of art when what I always thought art therapy was when you send a kid into a psychologist or psychiatrist, I don't know which one of their office, and they say, okay, let's play with the ink blot on the page, and do you see a butterfly or the devil?
Okay.
Those situations do occur. I worked with people who were in an institution, and they were there by choice for the most part. Mainly, sometimes they were not. They were there because they had other illnesses, other physical illnesses. But and I worked with as an adjunct therapist to a psychiatrist.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I was working, for a different objective than I would, or most artists would have worked for themselves. Sometimes some artists I worked with adults. Some people work with a mixed population. Some art therapists work with only children. So there's all kinds of different approaches that seem to work better, or they need to be modified to work as up to their optimum with whatever age group or what other problems the individual might have. So go ahead.
I was going to say, so when you're looking at art done by people, in therapy, do you have like warning signs, like if they turn in the painting, you can look at it and go, uh-oh.
Well, I'll tell you, a lot of people, there's a sort of a misconception, I think, that the art therapist is going to analyze your work. And that is not exactly true. Sometimes I give the person, I try to start where the person is from an art standpoint. In other words, if they've never used materials before, or if I can tell, if they come in and they're really, really angry about being there, and they've never used art before, this is a challenge. So what I generally did was try to start them where they were. Now, this might be where they were artistically, if they'd been a watercolorist before, for instance, but now they had trouble with control just in their lives. I might start with watercolor because they're familiar with it, but they may have a trouble controlling watercolor.
That's hard.
I will try to lead them with materials into more and more types of materials that are easily controllable. That's one way. If they're extremely angry and they've never worked with art before, I will start them with clay. And because one of the things you have to do before you make something out of clay is to get the air bubbles out. And to do that, you wedge it by throwing it on the table. And
sounds like fun.
I might even suggest that they name the clay. And a lot of times they will name, they might name their doctor. They might name, but that helps them to focus on what they're really mad at. What their situation is. So then they can take that clay after it's wedged and they can turn it into something that is positive. Nice. They can make it something like that. So I mean, there's different ways of using materials themselves to just create a cathartic experience for the person, and they will feel better afterwards. And we don't have to analyze it. We've just allowed them to vent actually through artwork.
I wonder how many people, so many people do crafting, whether it's sewing or jewelry making, scrapbooking, there's a creative element to it.
Yes.
And there's, I remember the whole thing, don't say art fair, then you can, then you can't, and then you can't say arts and crafts. Art is different than crafts. There's like that thing. This is art, this is craft, right? And even folk art is a whole thing, and it is there are differences. Fine art is different than doing embroidery at home, or is it? I don't know.
Well,
I don't want to get in trouble, but the crafting, the people do
these lines. I think these lines are very blurry between art and craft and creativity and repeating a pattern that somebody else has told you to do. I mean, all this stuff is useful. I don't diminish any of it, actually. I wouldn't. I have my own taste. That that's my taste. And I know that everybody who is working on their chosen project is probably working something out. We're not calling it art therapy. And they might be reinforcing their personality. They might be reinforcing really what some other person would observe as their problem, But until they see a need to change, you're probably not going to get very far by telling them they shouldn't do that, whatever it is they're doing, and do something else.
But people at home doing their craft, people at home doing their crafts, it's a positive thing. Then, I mean, there's you're on the crazy hamster wheel of work and kids, and how many people come home, open the beer, and sit in front of the TV, right, or whatever. That whole image of just they're tired. But having a hobby that is artistic, I think there's some positives to that, where you are stimulating your brain by doing something creative, not necessarily following somebody else's pattern. You could be doing painting. You could be doing quilting, because quilting is kind of neat too. And there's mathematical qualities to all of that. It's like learning to play an instrument. I think there's, if you have these talents, and maybe you're good at sewing and you enjoy it, and you're doing the drapes in your house, so that's good. But there's a therapy to it's like everyone's meditation is so healthy and important for us all. Do we meditate? Is it easy? Maybe by quilting, in a way, you're doing it because you're in a zone. You're calming yourself down, because the stress level, I think art and music, reading a book, watching a movie, you're in a zone away from the ordinary drama. You know what I mean? And it's a way for our bodies to kind of enjoy life. Instead of getting mad and cleaning the house, I'd rather get mad and go make a pot. Or go garden or something.
There's a lot in what you say. And I've seen programs, therapy programs. I wouldn't they're not art therapy programs, but they are a different kind of therapy program, or so-called named. But we're weaving yarn in and out of a plastic grid, like a basket, is a common thing. Making pot holders in and out is a common thing. It's not very artistic, but it serves a purpose. I mean, those people are maybe they are disorganized, maybe they are their level of anxiety is such that they can't focus on anything, or they have difficulty, and so something very regimented that really requires not very much thought, but is soothing, and it gives them a framework to literally to do a task and to focus. So it can be useful. It really can. The difference, I think, there are self-identified artists like me, like a lot of people, and those we can have cathartic experiences too, while we're doing our stuff. We don't generally set out to do that. It's usually a surprise afterwards, or once we get into it, we realize, oh, wow, we'll have a little light will go off about what we're doing and how it relates to what we're living. But because generally artists work within an organizational framework, and that involves things like things that we've learned, like the importance of balance, how line affects an artwork, how shapes affect that, how we organize it according to repetition, maybe, or just figuring out a general composition, or how our color is constructed, or what are we saying with the color? How is it? How are we using particular colors to say what we want to say? As it is, the color harmony might be harmonious, or it might be jarring, depending. So generally speaking, this isn't 100%. 100% would be impossible, but but generally speaking, an artist their work will have an organization to it. It will be pleasing. I can give you examples, or people are probably thinking of examples as I'm talking about organization. They might think about Jackson Pollock and they say, well, that guy's not organized and it's just drips and stuff. Well, but actually it is organized. It's just not an organization you like.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a person that you go in their office and there's papers everywhere and you go, how can they know what? And then they'll know. And I'm speaking because I kind of am exactly that way. You can walk in, yet even though then I'm like all like everything has to be fixed perfect, but I'll spread out and have papers everywhere and it looks like a complete chaos, but I'll know exactly where everything is. There's people like that. It's like organized chaos, and it's fun.
And our clients who do art therapy, their products, they're spilling out at an emotional level. Sometimes they will have an art background that lets them be a little more organized, but a lot of times in art therapy, sculpture or painting or piece of clay it has a sort of a chaotic quality to it. Not always, but there's a slight difference. I appreciate them. I've seen exhibitions of art therapy work, and I always appreciate them because of their expressive quality.
And they're also creating something to go, wow, I made something. Because so many people do, I can't draw a straight line to save me. I can't carry a tune in a bucket, But one thing too, like I know that people going through addiction, that they'll pick up knitting or like smoking. If you pick up knitting or crocheting, you're learning a skill, you're creating something, right? But you're doing something with your hands to take yourself off of the smoking or the drinking because of the repetitive qualities that come with that kind of addiction, where it's just like light another cigarette, have another drink, and not even it. Of course, the chemicals are getting you, but there's a hand to mouth kind of thing. So there's this movement, and knitting takes that away. Like you'll see guys walk around knitting and then like that's what's going on. But I think it's a healthy thing. I mean, it's like, so you're learning how to knit, or crochet, or you're doing something with your hands to there's something going on between that and your brain and chemicals, endorphins, and
it's
calm.
Focus. It's focus. So you're focusing, instead of being scattered with a million thoughts, focused on one thing. So you're looking at hand and eye coordination.
But a lot of people are bifocused, like not bifocused, like eye kind of thing. Like someone will watch TV and still be watching it, but be fidgety. And so doing knitting will pacify that external fidgetiness, because the fidgetiness comes if you stop smoking or drinking. Because you've got that extra, because you're taking away the fidgeting by having a cigarette, right? Or smoking a joint, whatever it is in the addiction, or having a piece of chocolate cake. You're replacing that habit with something that's positive, that's not going to hurt your body, and you're creating something, and then you're actually at a relaxed place where your body can perhaps heal and breathe. And then you can start making better choices, and you're switching chemicals. All of this ends up with about chemicals in our body, in our brains, I think. So I'm not a therapist, but
you're switching chemicals because you are doing a physical activity, like you say, with this particular ones, these are repetitive activities. I haven't worked with a lot of alcoholics, so I don't know whether they're they're dealing with the underlying physical problem. It's
Mm-hmm.
not, and whereas most art therapy involves an emotional problem, most of it. So it's that kind of activity you're talking about. I can see where it has a real use. I don't, but they probably don't talk. Those people, would they do this at an AA meeting, for instance? Because then they will talk about possible other issues that got them into the addiction.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, because there's an emotional component with addiction
Oh.
for sure. There's absolutely an emotional component, but the emotional spurs the activity,
Yeah.
So the activity, replace the activity, and then they work on emotions. And the other thing too, it's like when you're doing these kinds of, art as an activity, right? Because you're doing it takes away negativity, because it's like I think it could help people with depression, because
yes,
you're doing something,
Well,
Um,
yes, that's part of it. But one of the things that the idea of the therapy, you have to initially do something, like do an activity, and through that activity, you may learn more about yourself, so you can alter your perception of things. Or you can figure out a way to overcome what is making you depressed. Now, that isn't going to happen 100% of the time, and it's not going to be a short-term deal. But there's so many ways that art works its way into our lives and our thoughts, and so many ways that it can boost us, so many ways it can help us overcome things. It's art continually amazes me.
And it teaches us.
It transports you to a different place. And I think there's a sense of accomplishment, whether you're very new at art or you're practiced at it or you're in therapy, that if you like any little bit of what you created, there's a sense of accomplishment and maybe if I practice, I'll get a little bit better each time. And that to me is therapy. Like, it's just like cooking, so you burn the first few cakes, big deal.
Well, cooking is an art. Mm-hmm.
It is, yeah. And you learn to control things better, and you learn what mistakes not to make again,
Right.
So I think
baking a cake is science, decorating it is art. Creating the recipe is art, art and science. But that's the thing, there's pride with this too. Did you see that when you were doing art therapy? Victoria, did you see pride come out of it? Like,
I did. I did. I saw surprise and pride, because I was working with adults, and so many times you'd say, well, I'd like to get you involved in art therapy, and the wall would go up, and they would, their hands would go out in front of them, and they'd say, oh no, I'm not an artist. My sister was an artist. I was a mathematician in the family, so many people feel that they aren't artists because they've got a preconceived idea of or a standard of what they think art is. And they don't see themselves as being able to attain that, which is really sad. They are always surprised when something that they do really looks good, and it does look good. And when I tell them it looks good, I'm not just giving them a platitude, because I think they really have achieved something really nice.
Mm.
And they seem they I didn't know I could do that, they say.
Mm-hmm.
So when the next time they have an opportunity to come to an art therapy session, they're much more agreeable about it and wanting to have the positive experience again.
Mm.
One thing you have that I want everybody to understand is that art therapists don't exactly decide or look at a piece of art and say, well, that means so and so, and this means that, and now I really know what this person is about. No, you don't. You never interpret the artwork as a therapist. You could ask them questions. You ask them to interpret their artwork because everything that's in life isn't universal to everybody. And for instance, the color red,
Mm-hmm.
we associate that in our country with danger, maybe. We have red fire trucks, we have red stop signs. If you go to another country, red has a different meaning. It may possibly mean celebration. So you a lot of times, when I first started doing this, I was surprised several times by seeing something which triggered a reaction in me that I assumed that was the reason the other person put it in, because they had the same reaction to it that I did. And I'd say, well, does this mean so and so? I'm trying to lead them on, and of course they say, oh no, it doesn't mean that at all. And then they would tell me what it meant to them, and it was a lot of times totally the opposite way. So you never want to, you always want to include the client in interpreting their own work.
But that is, at the end of the day, that is what art's about, is what as the viewer or the listener.
Yeah.
It's, you listen to a piece of music and think about what you think the songwriter wrote it this way, and this is what it's about, and that, oh my gosh, this, this person lost, as like kind of thinking like someone's lost their wife in the song, right? And thinking, oh, the musician has lost their wife. No, they didn't. They watched a movie and thought, hey, this would be a cool story. Somebody murdered her. Now we're going into a whole thing, but it's not what it was. You know what I mean? So, I think that's that's the beauty of art, is everyone can take what they want out of it.
We do this, when we go to the museum, we're doing this. We, like you say, we see a piece of art and it touches us at a certain level, and we assume that that's what it means to everybody, or what the artist wanted us to see in it. So, but it really isn't always true, and I think we have to be careful about looking at the work of a dead artist and saying what he meant by this, whatever he did, because he has not written down what he meant. He's leaving it to us, as a wise person does. So
I think, this is one of the things, Victoria, is, the importance of museums, art museums, and the fact that with what you're building with the Southwest Museum, to me, the Southwest Regional Museum of Art, is that you're also including this art center, which I know that was a bigger picture than what you first started off with. I want a fine art museum, and now it's grown and grown. But so the museum itself, really, when people go to see art and take it in, that's educational. That's an experience as well. For movement and inspiration, or it is emotional too, right? But then having the art center for education, that is an important thing too. So are you going to be doing therapy or like educational programs with the museum?
The two are going to go together. We're going to divide art making we're going to include art making, not exactly divided, include art making and art looking. I'll call it that, as far as a museum goes. Sometimes the classes will go up into the museum and we'll talk about how other artists have solved compositional problems, maybe, or what kind of color harmony they use. So we can go back and forth. We can learn from what's been done already by artists, and we can then take that knowledge and go back to the creating space that we have and put that into practice. So these are two aspects. We're talking about having. A lot of it depends on the actual space that we're going to be using for the art making area. But we want to have enough equipment that various kinds that we can do printmaking, we can do clay work, we can do silk screening, maybe we can do some forms of intaglio printmaking, painting, sculpture. I don't know that we'll be able to do glass work because that requires a very high intensity furnaces. So what we're going to do, what we can do, and we're also going to work with the artists in the Silver City community because they have areas of expertise that they work in, and they have the ability to teach. They know their craft well. And we want the other aspect besides art making then is art appreciation. So we're going to have lectures. And that sounds very dry, but we're trying to prevent that from being dry because people want to know about artists of their, they want to know about technique. Sometimes they don't want to necessarily do it themselves, but they want to know how things get accomplished. So we have a film series. In fact, we're already beginning to start our film series on particular artists, and we're going to use the Silco Theater in Silver City. We're going to rent the theater. Cool. We're going to give a lecture about the artist. We're going to bring a piece of the artwork that artist has done, an original piece of artwork, and talk about that artist. And we're going to show the film about that artist's life. So that's one way where we can reach portions of the community that don't want to do art, but they want to learn about it.
Yeah, that's cool. So it's really, when you think about art, there's going in, appreciation is the big component, right, as the viewer. But then art appreciation, to understand it, appreciation comes with understanding. And then, therapy is like to directly go to your emotions and figure things out. And education goes in both in a way, right?
Well, we are not going to have art therapy sessions in the museum. But people, I know that therapeutic things happen when people do art. So it's there's not going to be anything formal to it. But many aspects of a therapeutic outcome occur when people complete an art project. So it may just mean that their esteem is boosted. It means that they've accomplished what they meant to say. They feel good about it. And all the time that this is going on, it's going on through learning, through education. So it goes hand in hand, even if we don't name it as a therapeutic setting.
Okay, so
every time you create art of any type, there's a thought process. And there's what you have in your mind that you want to create, and it may or may not get there. It might go somewhere completely different.
Yeah.
And you either like it or you don't, or you like it for a while, or sometimes you have to wait 3 days and then look at it again and you get a whole different take on it. And then when other people look at it and they comment, then you're like, oh, well, okay. I'm glad you like it because I don't. Or what do you mean you don't like it? It's interesting because it's such a way of opening up conversations and opening up a new path of thinking.
And understanding, bridging
Mhm.
gaps and creating understanding. Hmm.
It
Art
is.
just rocks. That's really what
Mhm.
it comes down to. We all love art. Art is good for us.
Yeah, it is.
It is. Art is good for us. I think that should be the title of this
I
podcast.
think that should be the slogan of the over the art room door.
Yeah,
Mhm.
really. Art is good for us and it rocks. It really does. I'm so excited about the museum.
Yeah,
It's such a
it's
massive
way cool.
project. And
Mhm. You
I,
said
I just
massive.
I did say massive is my new word. That and getting the yes.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you meet your high school friend. You start getting old words back in your vocabulary. But yeah, it's a big, big project and it's going to
Mhm.
be really, really awesome for Silver City because I
It
mean, that's
is.
the thing about Silver City is it is an art community. Even you're talking about the Silco Theater. I mean, those historic theaters downtown. You even think about the Murray Hotel, that's artistic. The architecture of downtown Silver City is
Oh,
is
it's
just
awesome.
it's magical. And then here you are with there's different funky stores and then there's galleries and
Right.
it is all about art. And I think it just is nice to see a museum coming into fruition because it's just going to really put Silver City on the map as an art destination, which, the whole state is really about art. And
It
I think
is.
the new Mexico True um, moniker is so important too because it's about keeping the heritage, the culture, and where it was, keeping it authentic. And I think that's a big role of what art does is keep it authentic.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
Silver,
awesome. Go ahead.
go ahead. I was just saying, Silver City has always been, and since in the last, I would say in the last 30 years, particularly, Silver City has been, an art destination. Um, Having the museum is going to make it even more so, and I think it's just such an enriching um, idea concept that we're trying to build here. And
Yeah.
we have a lot of enthusiastic volunteers, a lot of people who are enthusiastic about coming to the museum. We get asked, how is it coming along? How is the project coming along? And it is coming along. It seems slow in some respects because it is such a big project, but
Yeah.
but everything is definitely moving forward. And
Is
we are confident that this board of the directors, we are confident that this will come to fruition.
mm.
Cool.
And
That's
as you're
awesome.
all working towards this, because you have to start, here's the seed of the idea. Ooh, I want to do this, right? And then you have to put the action behind it. And
Right.
then the patience of to just keep going until it happens, right? And
Yes.
trial by error. Has this been a big learning curve, like to make this work? I mean,
Well, for me, it's certainly a learning curve because I've never been involved in anything this large before. That requires so much input from government, from public from the public. um, and it's logical. I mean, I'm learning logic through this because there are definite steps that have to be done in progression, and we can't just jump all over the place trying to study. So we're being very organized about doing this and dotting our i's and crossing our t's
Mm.
and all that. So that's why what's really where our confidence comes from, that and the fact that we know that it's a good idea,
mm,
Yeah. And
and
the community
and
is
it
going
will
to,
benefit. This will
yeah,
benefit so many people, and it will
yeah.
benefit people who even aren't interested in art from an economic standpoint. Because as you put a museum in a town, uh, people come to see it, and they buy things. They get gas. They have snacks. They go to other stores while they're here. So the general economy grows. This
Absolutely.
and more people benefit that in a peripheral way than you ever expected.
Yes, this is true.
Yeah.
The other thing too, when we talk about these kinds of, what it does for a community, it really does, add quality of life to a community through the educational sphere, through definitely bringing in the tourism, market into it. So and it really is an experience. One thing we've been talking about a lot on shows in regards to tourism is regenerative tourism. There's sustainability, of course. So please don't, leave litter in the streets of Silver City or anywhere for that matter. But also where people are, contributing back into the community that they're visiting, that they become part of it in a way. So when you're doing classes, for example, is a great way of, being part of the community. You're doing something. It's like volunteering on a vacation,
Yes.
That's a really good way of getting to understand an area. And I think that's one thing with the museum having these, educational opportunities, that visitors can get involved in the learning and meet locals that way, and just get involved instead of, just looking at monuments. You do something, and monuments are cool too. We love them, but you know what I mean.
You and I have talked about this before. And I forgot to mention it this time, that we are planning art tourism as a part of this, so that somebody could come for a day or 2 days or up to a week even, and have a reservation to do this. But we would arrange art programs for them, so that they can do art making while they're here, and they can, just enjoy Silver City in another way.
I like it. I like it a lot. Very exciting. And everyone, again, go to victoriachick.com so you can see Victoria's awesome work, right? And also learn about what she's doing with the museum and all the board of directors and everybody involved. You can go to the museum website. It is swrmart.org. So it stands for Southwest Regional Museum of Art. So swrmart.org is the website. So there's art on the website already that you can view. That's part of the collections that have been donated. And are you still looking for donations, art donations, and just donations in general to help you get that building?
Well, we are looking for art donations. At this point, we can't accept anymore because we have no place to store it anymore. Our storage area is full, and we have, we're doing very well on that. We would like to have more. If someone has something that they would like to donate in the future, we would love to hear about it. If you want to give us a line, and we can talk about how that can happen. Let's see. We always need appreciate donations, and right now we are getting ready for a capital campaign, which is probably going to take a couple of years. So because we need to make a larger impact with more people on how this project can benefit the community, can benefit everybody in the community. And so we need to increase our ability to get that word out to more people. And so that's where we are right now.
Awesome. It's a step-by-step process, and power to you guys for doing it. It's amazing. That's a lot of patience. So we really respect that. And we look forward to our next month conversation with you, Victoria. Everyone, again, every third Saturday, Victoria is right here on Big Blend Radio, and you can keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. Thank you so much, Victoria.
Oh, thank you, guys. Have a great week. And
you too.
Okay.